Okay, so tonight we are diving deep into some seriously eerie territory with a creature you might not have heard of before.
Oh, I bet plenty of our listeners have at least heard the name.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
But whether they have or not, they're in for a treat or maybe a fright with this one.
That's the spirit.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Snallygaster, and just the name is enough to give you chills.
It does have a certain ring to it, doesn't it?
It does, and the creature itself is supposedly even more terrifying.
Yeah, it's said to lurk in the mountains of western Maryland.
Oh, so this is an American cryptid then.
It is indeed, and a pretty notorious one at that.
So what makes this Snallygaster so scary? I mean, is it like Bigfoot or something?
Oh, it's much more monstrous than Bigfoot. Think more along the lines of a dragon or a wyvern.
Whoa, hold on. Dragons in Maryland.
Oh, not exactly dragons, but something equally terrifying.
Okay, so set the scene for us. What are we dealing with here?
Imagine a creature with colossal wings. I'm talking huge wings that blot out the sun when it flies overhead.
Okay, that's already pretty creepy. I can see where this is going.
And it's not just the wings. It has claws sharp enough to tear through anything.
No thanks, no thanks.
And a beak that could pierce steel. And some stories even say it has tentacles.
Tentacles, now that's just messed up.
It's a truly bizarre and frightening combination of features, and it's not just some recent invention either.
So this isn't just some internet creepypasta.
Not at all. This creature is deeply rooted in the folklore of Western Maryland, brought over by German immigrants who settled there back in the 1730s.
Wow, so this legend's been around for centuries.
Exactly. They called it the Schnellergeist, which means quick spirit in German.
Schnellergeist. That sounds pretty spooky already.
It does evoke a sense of swift, unseen terror, doesn't it?
It does, but wait. You said Schnellergeist. How did that turn into Snallygaster?
Well, language has a way of changing over time, doesn't it? As the story of the Schnellergeist was passed down through generations, the name got a little twisted and morphed into the more guttural Snallygaster.
Snallygaster. Yeah, I could see how that happened. It's like the name itself became more monstrous.
Almost onomatopoeic, isn't it? Like the sound of some terrifying beast.
Definitely. So this quick spirit, what did the early settlers say it looked like?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. There's no one definitive description.
Really? So it's like a shapeshifter or something?
In a way, some say it's half bird, half reptile with features of demons and ghouls all mixed together.
So basically a nightmare creature.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the fact that its appearance is so fluid and changeable just adds to its mystique and terror.
I can see how that would make it even scarier. It's like you never know what you're going to encounter.
Exactly. Could be lurking in the shadows, taking on any form it chooses.
Okay, so we've got this shape-shifting monster with a terrifying name and a long history in Maryland. But how did it go from, like, whispers and campfire stories to something bigger?
Well, in 1909, the Snallygaster went from folklore to front-page news.
What happened? Did someone actually catch it?
Not quite, but a series of articles in the Middletown Valley Register, a local newspaper, brought the Snallygaster to the attention of the entire region.
What did these articles say?
They reported all sorts of chilling encounters with the creature, fueling a wave of panic that swept through Maryland.
Wow, so like a real-life monster hunt?
Exactly. People were terrified.
Okay, so what kind of encounters are we talking about?
One story that really gripped the public's imagination was about a man who claimed to have been snatched from his home by the Snallygaster.
Oh no, snatched right out of his house.
That's what he said. He was found later, miles away, drained of blood and utterly terrified.
That's horrifying. I mean, just the thought of being taken by some giant winged creature in the night.
The fear must have been paralyzing, and the story really played into people's deepest fears.
So were there any actual sightings of this Snallygaster, or was it all just hearsay and tall tales?
There were countless reports of sightings, but the Snallygaster is a master of disguise and illusion.
So it's like a phantom, a shadow flitting in and out of sight.
Exactly. People claim to see it swooping down from the sky, its giant wings casting an ominous shadow over the land.
I can see how that would fuel the panic.
Yeah.
Every shadow, every rustle of leaves would make you think the Snallygaster was coming for you.
It was a time of genuine fear and uncertainty as the legend of the Snallygaster took on a life of its own.
Okay, so we've got this creature with a fluid, ever-changing description, deep roots in folklore, and now a media frenzy fueled by terrifying encounters.
Yeah.
This is already a wild ride.
And we're just getting started.
Oh, there's more.
Oh yes, much more. You see, there's a far more sinister aspect to this tale, a connection that goes beyond mere legend and touches upon the very fabric of societal prejudice.
Hold on, are you saying the Snallygaster is somehow connected to racism?
I am. We have to remember that this was a time when racial tensions were incredibly high, especially in the South.
Right, the Jim Crow era.
Exactly. Jim Crow laws were in full effect, segregating and disenfranchising Black people, and the Valley Register, the same newspaper reporting on the Snallygaster sightings, began to weave a narrative that specifically targeted Black communities.
That's awful. So they were using this mythical creature, this embodiment of fear, to further their own racist agenda.
It certainly seems that way. The first article about the Snallygaster in 1909 had a headline that sends chills down your spine. The colored people are in great danger.
Oh wow, that's just blatant.
They went on to claim that the creature primarily preyed on Black men, instilling terror and reinforcing existing prejudices.
So basically they took a creature from folklore, a figure of fear and the unknown, and twisted it into a weapon against an already marginalized group.
Exactly. And that's where the story of the Snallygaster takes a truly dark turn. And it's a chilling example of how easily something like folklore can be twisted and manipulated for such nefarious purposes.
It's really unsettling to think that something as fantastical as the Snallygaster could be used to justify discrimination like that. Did it stop there, though? Or did they take it even further?
Oh, they definitely didn't stop there. The Snallygaster became more than just a tool to instill fear. It was also used for political manipulation.
Political manipulation? How did they manage that?
Well, in 1932, when Black communities in Maryland were starting to exercise their right to vote, the Valley Register decided to resurrect the Snallygaster legend.
Oh no, seriously. After they supposedly killed it off.
You see, they couldn't resist the power that the Snallygaster held over the community.
I guess that makes sense. People were still terrified of it.
Exactly. And so the Valley Register started publishing stories suggesting that voting for a certain political party would offer protection from the Snallygaster's wrath.
Wow, so they were basically using a mythical creature to try and sway voters.
It was a blatant attempt to intimidate and control Black voters by preying on their fears.
That's so messed up.
Yeah.
They weren't even trying to be subtle about it.
It really highlights the danger of unchecked power, especially when it controls the narrative. But thankfully, not everyone was fooled by the Valley Register's tactics.
So someone pushed back against this. Did they try and debunk the Snallygaster legend?
Well, there was a rival newspaper, the Hagerstown Morning Herald, and they saw right through the Valley Register's manipulation.
Good for them. So what did they do? Did they try to prove the Snallygaster wasn't real?
They did something even more clever. They decided to fight fire with fire by using the power of storytelling to dismantle the harmful myth that the Valley Register had created.
I'm intrigued. How did they do that?
In a stroke of genius, they published a story claiming that the Snallygaster had finally met its demise.
Oh, so they killed it off again?
But this time they made sure it was a memorable death. They claimed that the Snallygaster had drowned in a vat of moonshine.
Well, hold on, mighty Snallygaster taken down by a bunch of bootleg booze.
It might sound ridiculous, but it was a brilliant move.
I can see that. It kind of undermines the whole terrifying monster image.
Exactly. And it also resonated with the local culture. Moonshine was a big part of life in those days.
It's almost poetic justice, in a way. The monster that was used to spread fear and control, ultimately defeated by something as simple and commonplace as moonshine.
It just goes to show that sometimes the best way to fight a bad story is with a good one.
So what happened after the Snallygaster's second death? Did the legend finally die out?
Well, like most legends, it's hard to truly kill off a good monster story.
So it came back again.
After a period of relative obscurity, the Snallygaster experienced a resurgence in recent years, but with a bit of a twist.
A twist? What kind of twist?
This time around, the Snallygaster shed its dark past and emerged as a somewhat kitschy fun figure.
Wait, seriously? From a symbol of racism and fear to like a mascot?
It sounds strange, but it's true. You can now find Snallygaster-themed merchandise, ice cream flavors, even a beer and music festival that bears its name.
Wow, so it's gone from a figure of terror to a tourist attraction.
It's quite the transformation.
But it makes you wonder, do people know about the Snallygaster's darker history? About its connection to racism and voter suppression?
That's a really good question, and it brings up an important point. While it's great that people find enjoyment in the legend, it's crucial that we don't forget its disturbing origins.
It's like what Susan Farrer, the author who wrote about the Snallygaster, said, the real monster in America is racism.
Her words are a powerful reminder that even when we're dealing with mythical creatures and seemingly harmless folklore, we can't ignore the ways in which they've been used to perpetuate harm and injustice.
It's a sobering thought. It's easy to get caught up in the fun and excitement of a legend, But we shouldn't forget that these stories can reflect some very real and very dark aspects of our history.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of critical thinking and context. When we encounter a legend like the Snallygaster, we need to dig deeper, look beyond the surface, and understand the full story. And it makes you wonder how many other seemingly harmless legends out there have similar hidden stories.
Right. Like, are we just scratching the surface of some really messed up stuff?
It's definitely possible folklore often reflects the societies that create them, and sometimes those reflections can be pretty unsettling.
So where does that leave us with the Snallygaster? I mean, it's got this really dark past, but now it's like this kitschy, fun figure. Can we enjoy the legend while still acknowledging the harm it was used to inflict?
That's a tough question. On the one hand, we have the power to reclaim and reinterpret these stories, to kind of strip away the harmful elements and focus on the parts that resonate with us.
So like taking something negative and turning it into something positive.
Exactly. And there's actually a really interesting example of that within the Snallygaster myth itself. Have you ever heard of the Dwayyo?
The Dwayyo? No, can't say I have.
Well, in some versions of the Snallygaster story, the Dwayyo is this fierce wolf-like creature that acts as the Snallygaster's adversary, almost like a protector.
Oh, wow. So it's like the Snallygaster's arch enemy.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is that the Dwayyo comes from the very same folklore that was used to spread fear and prejudice.
So it's like this creature born out of a harmful narrative is now being reimagined as a symbol of resistance.
It's a really powerful example of how we can reinterpret these stories and find new meaning in them. But on the other hand, we can't just forget about the Snallygaster's history as a tool of racism and oppression.
Right. Ignoring that past would be like condoning it.
It's a delicate balance for sure. We can enjoy the legend and even find inspiration in it, but we have to do so with a critical eye and a sense of responsibility.
It sounds like the key takeaway here is that we can't just passively consume these stories. We need to engage with them, actively question their origins, and consider the different perspectives that might be at play.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's about being aware of the power that these stories hold and using that power for good.
So what advice would you give to our listeners who want to approach folklore and mythology in a way that's both enjoyable and responsible?
Well, I think the first step is education. Learn about the origins and historical context of the stories you encounter. Don't just take them at face value.
So do your research dig a little deeper?
Exactly. And be open to hearing different perspectives, especially from those who have been historically marginalized or misrepresented.
It's about recognizing that these stories, even the ones about mythical creatures, have real-world implications.
They can shape our understanding of ourselves and each other, and it's our responsibility to make sure that those understandings are based on empathy and respect.
This deep dive into the Snallygaster has been quite a journey. It's amazing how something that started as a simple monster story can reveal so much about our history and our society.
It's a reminder that even the most fantastical tales can hold a mirror up to us, showing us our strengths, our weaknesses, and the ongoing struggle for justice and equality.
So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world. And remember, sometimes the most captivating legends are the ones that challenge us to confront our own beliefs and biases.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.